This is the Public Historiography of Hanukkah, and this is your host, Dylan Rothbein, trans-rabbinical student and historian. Dylan Rothbein is Asperger's, dyslexic, blind, in a wheelchair, and has non-epileptic seizures. Dylan is a musician and filmmaker and has a BA in history.
There's a lot of resources you could find on the story of Hanukkah, which we will mention that we will explore in this video. But I am doing more than just telling the Hanukkah story, since I am trained academically in history. I will be approaching this from a historiography point of view. Let me explain what that means. Public history means doing history outside of the academy, and I don't think the work is not legitimate. And I think there's overlap between academic and public history, and allows the public to educate themselves. Many people on YouTube make great history videos, and that is an emerging trend. In regards to historiography, it refers to the record of secondary sources of a historical event, as opposed to a primary source, which is a source directly from that time period. A primary source for the history of Hanukkah would be the actual temple menorah, and a replica of the same temple menorah would be a secondary source. In this video, I will be examining the story of Hanukkah from the perspective of secondary sources, and given my analysis, which is historiography. All of my sources will be linked below due to copyright, otherwise I will get a copyright strike from YouTube and you will not benefit from this material. The story of Hanukkah can be told from many perspectives. The first question is, what was the catalyst for the events of Hanukkah to transpire? We will start with the secondary source of Sam Aronow, who is a neutral Jewish history YouTuber. In his first video in his Hanukkah trilogy, he says that the story of Hanukkah actually starts with the takeover of Jerusalem by the Seleucid Greeks and the violence that resulted. However, if we look at the social and cultural history of the YouTube channel Unpacked, what we see developed is a slightly different account. That Hellenistic Jewry became normalized, but was not favored by everyone. From a historical and cultural point of view, before Matthias and his 5 sons came along. Matthias was a priest that was pressured by the Greeks, the Seleucid Greeks, to either eat pork or die. He declined eating pork, which is a perspective echoed throughout the Jewish community of Judea, who are not Hellenistic. And you can see from the YouTubers Kings and Generals that Matthias was willing to kill a man who was willing to bring a pig to the temple and eat it. Unpacked says the hunger strike of Hannah and her 7 sons began along with Kings and Generals, its military history. So it was agreed by these 2 sources that this act of civil disobedience of not eating pork was very courageous for the fight for religious freedom. All of the sources I have laid out agree that Matthias agreed that his heir, all the sources that I laid out agree that Matthias laid out his heir to the priesthood, to the priestly class, was his son Judah Maccabee. At this point, all the videos further agree that Judah was put in charge of the rebel army of anti-Hellenistic Jews. However, the military history YouTubers, Kings and Generals, refers to them as Orthodox Jews. This is a misnomer. The idea of the sects did not appear until the Haskalah much later. In historiography, there's a tendency to ask binary questions. Unpack says that the history is that it was a binary war between the Jews and the Seleucids. But Ben Shapiro has made the case that Hanukkah is about the fight between Hellenistic and traditional Jews. Under the leadership of Judah, which is unanimously agreed upon by all the sources, the Seleucids did take the city of Jerusalem. When the Maccabees got word, the five brothers came from Modi'in. However, the YouTube channel Kings and Generals, it brings up a good point that when Jerusalem was taken, the Maccabees flee before they become rebels. And according to the Rugrats Hanukkah special, which we reviewed on this channel, which you can see in the description, they practiced Judaism in secret in the Judean hills. And as Jerusalem became Hellenized, they were attacked and used guerrilla warfare. And from a military point of view, this is the first time guerrilla warfare was used according to Kings and Generals. Culturally, in Unpacked, it says that the place Jerusalem was being Hellenized, and the Maccabees were not thrilled, but tolerated some of it aside from in the temple. Sam Aronow says when the Maccabees got to the city of Jerusalem, they saw the utter Hellenization of the city of Jerusalem as they took over the priestly class, that the Jews could give up on Hellenism or die. In regards to the Temple compound, which was desecrated by Hellenism and previous priests, the sources agree the temple was in shambles. But what happened next is interesting because, according to Unpacked and Kings and Generals, they found oil that was supposed to last one night, but burned for 8 nights. Sam Aronow says that this is only a folktale. As far as I'm concerned, to be fair to Sam Aronow, there are different interpretations, much more spiritual stock in Hanukkah, but I get where he is coming from. Unfortunately, all sources agree that the Greek king Antiochus was still on the hunt for the Maccabees, and that the king outlawed on all Jewish worship and Torah study in the Seleucid Empire. Here the war for Judean independence began. By this point, the Maccabees and their compatriots had to retreat back to the Judean hills because the city of Jerusalem was officially taken. At this point, Judah Maccabee was a legend, according to all the sources. However, this battle was very difficult, and Judah was not supposed to win, and yet he did, despite losing 2 of his brothers and losing his own life in the process. His tactics in the battle were similar to the tactics used by the US in the Vietnam War of guerrilla warfare, taking the enemy by surprise and knowing the terrain better than the enemy in order to succeed. All sources proceed to say that Jonathan and Simeon Maccabee survived, and interestingly, under the leadership of Judah, according to Kings and Generals, knew he was outnumbered, and they won anyway, which made Judah a hero to the Jewish people. Jonathan Maccabee took over as the priest and Simeon took over as military leader. Unpacked and kings and generals agree that by this time, Simeon tries to use diplomacy by building an alliance with the Roman Empire. And in Sam Aronoff, the video talked about the Brass Treaty, which is one of the videos in his trilogy. And the Romans thought they already had an alliance with the Jews, which changed the tide of the war, according to Unpacked and Kings and Generals. But Sam Aronoff says the diplomacy was done by Judah's cousin, who made it a point to speak in Greek, to be taken seriously. The diplomacy was a success. Sam Aronoff proceeds to say things got better in Judea over time. And all sources conclude by agreeing. After the war, which was an on and off war for years, there was the founding of the dynasty that concludes the story of Hanukkah, which is the legacy of religious liberty. And to me, religious liberty is the point of Hanukkah, along with the many other points. In the comments, feel free to discuss your own views of the history so we can all learn from each other.
And the winner is the Maccabees.
Son Yeshuati, Nana Elizabeth, Tika Tefilati, Nishanton Tam Elizabeth, Name Nina Beyak, Yikon Nabeyak, Isaac More Bashir, Nismore, Hanukkah Tommy's Beyak, Isaac More Bashir, Nismore, Hanukkah Tommy's Beyak. So Yeshuati, Nana Elizabeth, Dikon Nefilati, Yahodan Elizabeth, Nevadim Nabeyan, Hitonam Nabeyan, Isaac More Bashir Nizmor, Hanukkah Tommy's Beyan, Isaac More Bashir Nizmor, Hanukkah Tommy's Beyan.